hope Biketerra just becomes a platform that any indoor cyclist knows about and says, you know what, I just want to hop on a ride, and they know that it's the easiest thing in town to use and that they get enjoyment from it and they improve themselves from it.
Hello and welcome to episode 78 of the Virtual Velo Podcast with my co-host Chris Schwenker and me, Emma Martin. Well, the show that bridges the gap between athlete and avatar, that is indeed the Virtual Velo Podcast, keeping it real in the world of cycling esports. Well, what kind of person looks at $1 billion business like Zwift, sees a crowd of powerful competitors like Rouvy, MyWhoosh, Training Peaks Virtual, and says, yeah, I think I can make something better? Well, today you're going to meet just that person, because today we are talking to Matt Gibbs, the founder of Biketerra, a scrappy, community-driven virtual cycling platform that's quietly doing things differently. No massive budget, no glossy marketing machine, just a clear vision, a whole lot of grit, and a bold belief that the future of indoor cycling doesn't have to be dictated by the giants. Well, in this episode, we get into what makes Biketerra roll, from its open route creation and browser-based design to the surprising ways it's connected with real-world racing like the Tour de France. We'll also talk business models, elite-level racing, and whether there's really room for another player in this increasingly crowded space.
That is the question, isn't it, Emma? When I made the jump from my trusty CompuTrainer, which I did begrudgingly, by the way, to Zwift, it felt like that was the only game in town. Then came RGT in 2016, which, it built a loyal following. And I think some people are still pining away for RGT even now, but it struggled to gain any real traction. Fast forward to today, and there are several major players competing for users in the space. So I am especially curious to hear how Matt plans to carve out a niche within a niche with Biketerra.
Well, welcome to the Virtual Velo Podcast, Biketerra's founder, Matt Gibbs. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Emma. Chris, it is so good to be here.
Well, it's fabulous to have you. And I am so looking forward to this episode already, and we've not even started. Well, let's start with the big picture, shall we? Zwift is that $1 billion unicorn I was talking about in the introduction. Rouvy has just acquired Full Gas and Be Cool and claims over 250,000 subscribers. Training Peaks Virtual has a stable, loyal following. MyWhoosh is free, flush with investment, and this is no longer the pandemic-fueled virtual cycling boom, and there's consolidation in the space. Is there room for another player, Matt?
Oh, thank you so much, Emma. That was a great intro, by the way. I'd agree there is. Biketerra kind of started, like you said, as this scrappy little app. Honestly, it was a passion project. I saw the need for something that I can just upload a route. 2 seconds later, I can hop in it and start riding with my friends or by myself or in a race or all that stuff. So I do think there is room for a platform like this, one that does continue to lower the barrier to entry.
And what does inspire you to do that, Matt? What's inspired you to dive into these waters? What was your drive? Tell us that story behind the inspiration and that moment where you took the plunge.
Sure. So this was back in, 2018, 2019. I was a Zwifter. I would do virtual rides during the winter to keep in shape. Around that, there was a local group in my area that I was part of. We'd ride year round once a week. In the morning, we'd do a 6 a.m. ride. We'd get some coffee afterwards. And it was a great time. And then, COVID didn't help with things, and our respective families would get bigger and bigger. And so the writing was kind of on the wall that, this wasn't going to last forever. And so at that same time, I was thinking to myself, like, how cool would it be if we can just hop on a website or an app and just ride together, even if we didn't have all the time in the world. So that was kind of in the back of my mind. And fast forward to, late 2022, I was just browsing the web one day and I came across this really cool, it was a website, and it was did you ever hear of ASMR? It's like a way to relax and stuff. There's all kinds of YouTube videos about it, but it's just, this app I saw was basically an ASMR version where you're a car and you're just riding around in a 3D world and just kind of chilling out and watching the scenery go by. And I just thought to myself, that is A, super brilliant, and B, that's exactly what I was kind of looking for in terms of how to take the idea into actually working form. So I reached out to this guy and I was like, hey, I've got this, his name's Anslow, by the way. I've got this really cool idea. I just saw your app. It is amazing. how can we make this work? Like, can we work together to come up with a biking app based on that? And so, yeah, long story short, we we're just chatting here and there. In 2023 is when we officially started working on it. And it's been kind of, from then on out, we've been just kind of plugging away at it.
We've had enough of the major players, the CEOs, the developers of apps to know that this is not an easy thing to do, right? This is a daunting task.
Right.
So I'm curious, what is your background? What makes you the person that's able to do these things? Are you in coding? And is it your day job? And if not, then how are you balancing all of this?
Okay, so I am a web developer by trade. I worked at agencies in the past. I have a separate piece of software that I sell on the side that does pretty well. And based on that other piece of software, I can kind of fund this. And so it helps that it's just two of us. The expenses are very low for now, so it can kind of go on indefinitely. But yeah, the eventual goal is basically just to break even, get to the point where, we can bring on Outso full time and do some other stuff. We're not quite there yet, but that is the goal. But yeah, it's basically us. We're a very small, scrappy team. We're doing this for fun. We both enjoy it. We're both developers. And so, yeah, we're
So tell us a little bit about what gap you saw in that virtual cycling space. You said this was a sort of app, you came across another app and this was the sort of thing you were looking for. What was that gap that you didn't find elsewhere that drove you to create this? What problems for you were those dominant platforms not solving?
So the biggest one was just the ability to just take any route in the world and just ride it within minutes, within seconds even. At that point, I hadn't really heard too much about RGT. And by the time we started, they kind of already did the whole merger thing and were doing their own thing. But basically, our idea was just, we want to make this a web app so you can run it on any device, assuming you have Chrome, and just make it super easy to sign up, super easy to get started to ride, super easy to share and spectate and do all that other stuff. Something that isn't an app that you had to download that's 30 gigs in size and had to wait 5 minutes to load, like that kind of thing. Like the barrier to entry thing is the biggest the biggest goal. And there are other kind of corollaries. So yeah, there's the web app based, there's the ability to upload routes, and then there's also kind of one of the other things that didn't really settle all that well with me. I mean, RGT is probably by far the best of the bunch, but the whole gamification side of these apps kind of bugged me, even when I was using Zwift. You ride out in the real world and you're going 18, 17 miles an hour, and then you ride on Zwift and you're going 22, 23. That kind of bugged me. I just wanted something that was more realistic. And so that was another factor in terms of Biketerra. Like, we want to make sure that our fix is the best, the most realistic we can get, even if it does come at a cost of, sacrificing some gamification.
So what I was thinking, because one of Biketerra's defining features is those user-generated routes, and you've empowered that community to create their own riding experiences through that, rather than giving them a limited option in a library to pick from. It's a really interesting approach. Why take that approach? And are there specifically challenges or advantages that come with it?
Sure. So the benefits, obviously you can, if you want to ride a route that you do locally, or you want to train for an event, or even if you're a group race team and you're doing a race coming up in a few months and you just want to preview or recon a route, like that's perfect for this, where you can upload that same exact route and see exactly where every turn is and what the elevation profile is and all that. That's one of the best things about it. The reason, Zwift and some of the other platforms, they have worlds that they make available at certain times is, even Zwift with their massive user base, if they opened up every world at once, you get into kind of the dead world phenomenon where there's, you're riding around and you're not seeing a whole lot of people at once. So it's kind of a psychological thing. So that's one of the downsides of having so many route options. But one way we're trying to counter that is basically having a route of the week, so every week we're picking a brand new route where users can just hop on together and ride that route and see each other. So yeah, it's interesting seeing. I never thought of any of this being kind of a psych class, but it's definitely, people like seeing other people in the world. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a really practical question, because I haven't ever downloaded a route of mine into Biketerra. How long does that take, and how quick? I mean, because we were talking earlier on, about, updating an app could take some time before you get on. How long does that take to download your own route and have it created?
Okay. The first scenario is, let's say you already have a route in GPX format. Let's say you've done a route, you have it on your bike computer, and you want to upload it. So you go to Biketerra, you select that file, and within usually 30 seconds or less, it'll have that file ready to go. So you save it, it'll get saved privately so that only you can see it by default. And then you can just start riding it. Now, when you upload a route from a head unit like that, the GPS sometimes isn't quite as good just because GPS units are notorious for having elevation issues. Our route editor does take into account that kind of stuff, but we usually recommend Strava has its own route editor, and you can actually go in there and draw your own route on the map. And when you go that way, and then you upload that file to Biketerra, it's usually a lot better in quality. So yeah, long story short, it takes seconds to upload a route, start riding it.
It's really interesting. And that I think is really the differentiator for you, is that you're a browser-based platform. Tell us a bit more about that decision. Is it less strain on the hardware? Like, what was the exact reason why you went that way? And what are the trade-offs for an app-based program like Zwift and basically all the others? I don't know of any other virtual cycling offering that's browser-based like yours.
Right. The way we saw it, there were a lot of benefits and not too many downsides. Again, when it's on the browser, there's really nothing to download. You just go to the website, you browse routes, you select the route, and it all loads in the browser. And there's really nothing else you need to do for it. So accessibility is the biggest thing. In terms of downsides, obviously a browser rendering in 3D in the browser, you don't have quite as much in the way of resources as you would, let's say, if you have MyWhoosh is written in something called, what was it called? Unreal Engine. Like, it's a dedicated 3D engine, and it's optimized and all that stuff. Our graphics probably won't get to that point in terms of fidelity, just because it's web-based. We're using JavaScript. We're not using low-level bytecode stuff. But yeah, the web, I think, overall has a lot of benefits. And when we were starting on this, we weren't really sure how much we could take it. But it turns out we still have so much room to go in terms of improving the way the avatars look, improving the environment, adding more environmental details. So the way you see the avatars right now, that was kind of our first iteration before we really knew how far along we can take it, if that makes sense.
No, it certainly does. Now, so being browser-based, does that decrease like the specs of the computer that you may need? I know one of the issues with a lot of people is that their computers are, potatoes, and they can't run something that has such a huge footprint like MyWhoosh does, for instance. Does that solve that problem?
It does, yeah. We do have quality settings, so you can adjust how much detail you see based on the device you're using. So you can run, a lot of our users run tablets, like just normal iPads, $300 iPads. Some even just use their phones. And although we don't really recommend that, just because there's so much information we want to present in such a small space, like there's only so many pixels available. We usually recommend at least tablet size or greater, but that's even, smaller devices are possible. And lower power devices too.
So does that eliminate the need for giant servers then as well?
In terms of like multiplayer and stuff, like we do need servers to keep track of all the users on the route. We do need servers for, so when you load a route in Biketerra, what happens behind the scenes is it loads all kind of elevation data about that route. We need to pull all those from a server too, but it's not nearly as strenuous as it is, I think, versus something like Zwift, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense. So then would you be considered server side or client side?
It's both. So client side is the 3D part. Like client side is, your actual computer is rendering the 3D environment, but it's pulling the data for that 3D environment from the servers, if that makes sense.
No, it does. So the reason why I'm asking is that does everybody see the same thing on their screen? Like on Zwift, it's because it's client side. The one user may see something different than another user. Is
okay.
that
Yep?
How are you solving that problem?
Yeah. So in terms of multiplayer, it is client based. So you will see slightly different things than another user in terms of like the scenery, like the trees. The placements are the same generally, but individual trees would be different. When you're in a race, you might be a few meters different than what someone else sees, but in general, it's close enough where it's negligible.
Yeah, so I guess that brings us then now to the conversation about draft mechanics. I was looking at the website and a very thorough explanation about how you went into it. We've had Dr. George Gilbert on the podcast a few times, and you probably don't know, but he's an astrophysicist. And we know that Zwift's they're in PD5 now, and it might have like 7 or 8 different versions of it at this point. So that's not an easy problem to solve either. And the feedback that I've received is that you've done a pretty good job of it. So tell us a little bit about how you got to that point and what you've learned along the way. Why do you feel that yours is one of the more realistic versions?
Okay. I will start in saying that I am not a math or physics expert myself. Anslow he calls himself a generalist in terms of programming, but he is just a brilliant dude. He can figure out anything.
That's your partner?
Anslow it's the two of us working on it right now. So I do a lot of the server stuff, making sure the servers are okay, the website, making sure everything runs fine. He does a lot of the math, the physics, basically anything in the environment he's done. And he's done it all from scratch, which is pretty crazy, very massive. But also, so we've got Discord, we've got a Discord channel, as you guys know, and we have quite a bit of users in there that have engineering backgrounds. And so, in fact, in the case of drafting, a few people from chat actually helped us out, kind of developing studies and taking all this data, compressing it all up into a physics and drafting model that we're using currently. And so I think this model we're using right now is based on, I don't know, a dozen different studies and wind tunnel, all the data kind of squished together. And so our model, it's based on a lot of actual science. We've done testing on it, and it seems like it's pretty accurate. I've done some rides locally outside, compared it to that same route in Biketerra, and it's been spot on. So overall, we're very happy with it. And it's all, it's based a lot on our community, like just volunteers who have knowledge, retired engineers who just want to help. And it's been just amazing.
Yeah, the community is an amazing thing, and great to hear that it's helping out as well here. Now, one of those unique features, and this really caught my eye over the last few weeks because I've been taking a little look on your Facebook site, and this is one of the things that has been on there, is the ability to spectate or even ride along with real-world races like the Tour de France. And this has blown my mind, actually, looking at this, and this is really one of the things I really am keen to talk about. So you're riding along, spectating or riding with real-world races like the Tour de France virtually. Now, you need to tell me in detail what this is all about, because I have clicked links, I have watched, I have spectated, and all I have thought is, how on earth do they do that? So if you'd like to tell me a little bit about what it's about and how it works, that'd be brilliant.
Sure. So full disclosure, this is something I've wanted to build for years now, just the ability to just ride along in real time with the pros. So a few months ago, I've reached out to a couple people. One of them was it Pro Cycling Stats? Other people as well. Didn't really hear much of a reaction from them. Basically, we're just wondering, hey, how can we get this live data so we can pull it into Biketerra and get these riders to show up in real time? So long story short, it didn't look like it was happening this year. So we had almost given up. And then I was just spectating stage, 5 or so on the Tour de France site. And I was like, wait a second, why don't we do an experiment here? So long story short, we took this data that was just publicly available. We pulled it in just to see what it looks like. And it doesn't have data for individual riders, but it has data for groups, which is basically what we need, as much as we need. The data is not great. Ideally, we would kind of want updates every second or even less than that, like half a second or so. This data comes in every 5 seconds, 5 to 10 usually. So it takes a little bit of work to kind of predict where riders are going based on kind of not very good data. But long story short, Anslow and I kind of just plugged away at it for a week or two, ended up getting it working. And so that was stage 5, I think, when we started looking at it. And we had something up and running by stage 11, just like kind of a preview, like, let's just see how this thing works. We fired it up, and obviously it wasn't perfect. I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of time to develop this. We didn't have pretty much any test data before that. We just put it on the site. We're like, what the heck, why not? And sure enough, I mean, the riders were rendering where they should. The groups were updating. Anslow did just a tremendous amount of work just getting everything syncing properly. But yeah, by stage, I don't know, by the 3rd week of the tour, we're in a really good spot where, the data sometimes was coming out weird, where sometimes a group would completely disappear and we're like, what are we supposed to do? And then they'd pop right back in like 1,000 meters away. But yeah, Anslow did a ton of work getting everything pretty much smoothed out. And so yeah, by the 3rd week, we were just kind of having a good time watching it. We did a couple live streams from our account, just kind of, here's what it looks like from spectator mode. And it's such a cool perspective, like that's something you don't really see on TV. Like you can go pretty much anywhere. You can control a camera completely. So seeing them up, both really way up high, and then the next minute you can see them like right ground level. You can see the terrain beside them. I don't know. To me, it was very satisfying because I personally wanted.
So I'm giggling because it sounds to me like you're using the same data that would be used in the commentary box.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
totally.
giggling because those groups do disappear and then they pop back up on the timing screen, and that
Oh,
does happen. But what you're using then in terms of that data, I'm sitting here listening to you thinking about the possibility. And the possibility here then is that fans could engage with major bike races through Biketerra with you developing this further. Is that what you're thinking?
Oh, entirely. Yeah. Like we were thinking, if this one okay, we do the FAMs, which we are doing right now. If that one okay, we do the Vuelta, keep improving, keep iterating. So by this time next year with the Tour de France, we could maybe even get legit data from the Tour directly. That's the goal. And so we can have like second by second updates where people can just, spectate right there, right then. That would be so cool to see. But I just take it day by day.
It's really fascinating. As I'm listening to you describe this, I'm thinking to myself that this is your business. This is the business model for something truly incredible that could revolutionize the way that people consume major bike races.
Funny how that works too. Because, when I first started this idea, I was like, okay, I just want to have something where I can ride with friends, see the route. I just want to ride my local routes online. Honestly, like racing was kind of the last thing on my mind at that point. Like I'd never, kind of like we were talking earlier, Chris, like you did some racing, but we're both not great at it. So it was never really big for me. And so, after we had Biketerra up for a few months, some users were like, hey, I know you guys don't really want to do racing, but it'd be kind of cool if you had like times. So when you cross the finish line, you'd have a time and you can see it and you can have a leaderboard. So it was more or less like a really early idea of racing. And so we reluctantly implemented that. And in hindsight, I love it now. It's so much fun. And then now we're getting into this whole thing where, okay, we had this idea of spectating in a live stream. And so that was kind of like an afterthought. But now that we're doing it, it's really interesting to see how a platform can evolve. Like if you have the agility to kind of move quickly and iterate like that.
Yeah, so as I was watching it, first of all, the first time that I saw you put it on Facebook and I'm looking at it, I said, I don't get this. Like, this does not make any sense to me. Why would I do this rather than watching it on TV, right? But then as I was actually watching the YouTube videos and watching, in real time, you can go back and see where everybody is on the road, which is one thing where you really can't do that in the broadcast. You have whatever the feed is and that's that. But you can change viewing modes and then you scroll back and see where everybody is along the road and you have that perspective, which is really pretty interesting. I really feel like if you were to develop this and build it out and do it in where people have their computer open and they're watching the coverage on TV, it could be a significant enhancement to the way that you take in a race.
Yeah. And I think in terms of viewership, I saw some articles about how the Tour de France, the viewership is going down, how the FEMs, like it's just really hard to get people motivated to watching that. And I think a part of it is just because ASO, the company behind the tour, they're still kind of on this older mindset of how spectating should be, like how you should watch it on TV. But this is kind of introducing another perspective of why don't you give the spectators more control over their experience? And so, yeah, like you can watch individual riders and see the time gaps in first person. There's a guy, his name is Colin Everson. He does a YouTube stream and he did the whole Tour de France series. And basically he loves the whole mountain stages because in Biketerra, you can see the different switchbacks and since you can have full control over the camera, you can see behind you and see the switchback before you and see where the riders are behind. And you can see them coming up on the last switchback. And it is really cool seeing that from a different perspective of like, okay, well, they're 15 seconds back, but what does that look like on this mountain stage?
So you mentioned the ASO, and the ASO has a very strong grip on cycling. The one major hurdle that I can see here is that they're not going to relinquish that grip to you. Have you thought about that at all? There are significant sponsorship, trademark, other issues that you would have to address with them, and probably are the reason to why they haven't returned any of your calls.
That is definitely it's been a thought, more of a worry than anything. But yeah, that's definitely a possibility. And so this is kind of, I mentioned it again, how this is more or less an experiment. Like we're just seeing how this goes, giving it a shot. hopefully they'll contact us at some point, good or bad. I'm hopeful that this will become a positive thing for the cycling community, and we can work out a way that this can be more of a prominent thing for future races.
I mean, it's a fascinating idea. It really, really is. And all credit to you to be picking it up and running with it. And as you say, experimenting with it, because others could have done so before and they haven't. So, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes, Matt. So,
well, thank you.
No, one of the other things, when new users jump on board a new platform, say they've tried others, they've listened to the podcast, they think, oh, I'll jump on Biketerra. Now, one of the first things that new users tend to notice are graphics.
Oh, yeah.
And they judge them. Yeah. So you've acknowledged that it's a bit of an area to be worked on. What visual upgrades are coming and what are your priorities in that area?
Oh, sure. So the biggest thing we've been hearing is the avatars. So this is the first iteration still. I think coming up here in probably September, we're going to start focusing more on replacing the avatars, adding more animations, making them more realistic. And that's probably the biggest thing that we're going to focus on. Then there's also, we need to add more environmental details, like more different tree varieties, animals, fences, mileposts, all kinds of things to make it more interesting visually. Buildings right now, so, right now they're just polygons. They're not styled in pretty much any way except for some, I guess it's like a brick texture. That's something in the future we're going to address. That's going to be a hard one just because we don't have great data for buildings just yet. Every day there's more data for it, but as of right now, it's like we don't really know what a building's supposed to look like, so we just have to make some guesses. But yeah, there's a lot of things that we can and we will improve. In terms of with Virtual Cycling Labs, there's two big camps. There's 3D, and then there's the video. So Rouvy, I'd consider that video, even though they have overlays or whatever. But there's pros and cons to both. It doesn't get much better visually, but you can't really zoom out in Rouvy. You can't really have weather effects like night and day cycles. Lighting is kind of one of those things where you're kind of stuck if you've got a video. Whereas in 3D, it's a lot harder to make the world look good, but you do have all those benefits of it and the dynamics and rain versus sun versus.
Yeah, I love it when it rains indoors.
Yeah.
the number of times I've got on my bike indoors and gone, it's raining.
Yeah.
Could have gone outdoors for that.
Yeah.
We wanted to sort of shift the conversation a little bit, Matt, because we're going to talk about your business and your business philosophy. Your pricing model allows free event access, similar to what RGT offered. Can you describe your pricing strategy for the business that's really in sort of early phases of development and whether you're going to stick with that approach or things will change in the future?
Sure. So the goal is, we have low expenses, relatively speaking. So, there's not a whole lot we want to pass on to customers. We are paying for some data behind the scenes, like, buildings. When we pull in that data, we're using a third-party source for it. And that costs money. And as the user base grows, the costs will grow. So we kind of take that into account, but we also don't want to make it unreasonable for users, especially those that already have subscriptions to other places. So yeah, I think our goal is just to keep the prices low and reasonable, and just keep improving the way that Biketerra looks and functions.
I think it's important to tell people, what is the cost?
So right now it's $5.99 a month for the monthly subscription, or $59.99 a year for the yearly subscription. And once you're signed up to that, it's not going up. So we're locking that in forever if, I don't foresee any way around it.
Never say never, Matt, because that brings me to my next question here, is that you say that you're not profitable yet, that you want to break even, but I do all this stuff for virtually for nothing. And I get pushback from my wife when I try to go do a podcast and she wants to go lay by the pool, right? So it's not sustainable to work for free. So is there a pathway to become profitable, to scale, to do that? It's a great pie in the sky dream to say, I'm going to just want to break even and I'll be happy with that. But there's going to come a time when that's not really realistic for you.
Right. So to put things in context, right? So if you think of the big five or like the big six, right? You've got Peloton. I think they have like 3.5 million subs. Zwift has like 1 million. Rouvy's got 250,000, I think now. For us to be sustainable, we would probably need about 2,500, and that's breaking even. So it's not, I don't think it's unrealistic. We're not anywhere close to that just yet. But once we hit that point, that means that Anslo and have the freedom to continue working on this without worry. So, and if it grows beyond that, then that's even greater. It's even better. But yeah, so we're running a very lean ship in hopes that this will eventually turn into a break-even situation.
So let's just pick up on those timelines and that sort of rate of growth and those
Mhm.
milestones. What is your rate of growth and sort of time to milestones? Maybe, the first 50, the first 100, the first 500 subscribers, and then further. Where are you thinking that timeline and those milestones are going to be?
Right. So right now we're at a few hundred subscribers. We're probably 4,000 to 5,000 users currently. We're hoping that this winter season, if it picks up momentum, we could get a good bit of the way there. But I guess time will tell. And it's one of those things where we're not putting in a whole lot of marketing right now. It's mostly just kind of word of mouth, just be seeing the socials and saying, oh, I should give this a try. And just seeing that our mission is kind of like, we're just two dudes just building something that really interests us and we have a passion about. We don't have any plans on taking in any sort of investor money. We don't want to be in debt. I don't, but we'll just see how this thing rolls.
Chris has mentioned George Gilbert, and we talked a lot about Training Peaks Virtual being in beta mode or coming out of beta mode. Would you say you were sort of in early development stages and you were in a sort of Biketerra beta mode, or would you say this is the product and we are launched?
That's a good question. I'd like to say we've been in beta for a while now. Our process is very incremental, right? So we kind of start, we have goals of what we want to get done in this quarter, and then we think ahead, okay, so based on this trajectory, what do we want to build next? I mentioned at the very beginning that we had very little desire to do any sort of racing, but we added racing. It's been a lot of fun. We've had users sign up with good numbers. And so the next thing we're considering is like a dedicated TTT mode. So figuring out the UI for how to organize time trials and get teams in order and all that stuff. That's probably the next thing aside from visuals that we're going to focus on. It's been very we want to see what the need is, and then we're going to try to, if it makes sense, target that.
Yeah, so you mentioned the number of subscribers that you have. One of the metrics that we look to determine the popular platform or an app like yours is the greatest number of consecutive users at one time. You know how many you've had on the app at one time, the greatest number?
Great question. I don't know that right now. I know for events, we've had some events that have had 20-some, couple dozen users at once. I don't know beyond that how many people are riding right now, for example.
So I'm gonna sort of. I was gonna throw a left-hand question at you, Matt, but I don't know whether I'm going to use that phrase anymore. There's been an awful lot of consolidation in the market recently. We talked about Rouvy at the beginning of the show and their strategy of buying other businesses. Do you have an eventual exit strategy in mind? Acquisition, partnership, or something else? Or are you guys in this for the long haul? And do you see Matt at Biketerra and Anslo at Biketerra being the two running it and owning it for the long term?
Oh, I have no plans to sell this thing. In my ideal world, this would be a decades-long endeavor where we would just enjoy building this thing and seeing it grow. Reality sometimes doesn't match ideas, but that's the goal at least.
So is the joy for you now, Matt, not the riding, but the building?
I love riding, but yeah, it's been a lot of work, especially with the Tour de France stuff. We've been writing a lot of code recently. I do both. I enjoy hopping on rides with others. There's weekly rides. I love hopping in and getting dropped by everybody, which is great fun. But I also love now, it's weird, but I just love hopping into an existing event and just spectating and just seeing how it goes and just popping in chat and just saying, hey, how's everything working? It's really cool. It's kind of like watching your kid grow up a little bit, just seeing this platform that started out as nothing, and then now it's like some people are using it and they're using it for good. Like they're doing workouts, they're getting better, they're getting in shape, and it's kind of it's very humbling.
It's a true passion project in that way. I can certainly relate with that. And I certainly related with that with my own practice as a physical therapist. I always felt that way. You talked about it was very serendipitous that you got into racing, and that's a passion for you now and building that out. The possibilities with the ability to be able to ride real courses makes for larger domestic races like the Tour de Gila or Redlands. You could create those stage races on your platform and actually have a race that sits parallel to a real world race, or
Right.
even bigger races, what you've seen, what you can do with the Tour de France. Is that something that you have any plans to explore? And then the next question is that we've had the consultant for esports for the UCI on, and he's spoken about the plans for sanctioning. Is that something that you'd be opening to, being one of the multi-platform providers for a sanctioned racing program through the UCI with elite level racing?
So I can't rule anything out, but I will say that one of my personal tenets from the beginning is just to keep it scrappy and fun. Like the moment that you start introducing payouts, or the moment that racing starts becoming serious, that's when you have to to me, that's when it stops becoming fun. Like the moment you have to start doing verification and all of those things that you do with elite racers just to make sure they're not cheating and all that. That's something I'm not entirely thrilled about, but I feel like as long as we can offer racing that people can hop in and have fun, and it doesn't need to be super serious, that's kind of the path I'm kind of trying to veer us towards. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly does. It's your vision, and that's your vision. There, I'm sure if you asked Zwift right now if they would have done it differently, because we do know that they paused their elite racing. I specifically asked them, did this become too much of a headache for you? They wouldn't say that it became too much of a headache, but it was certainly one of the reasons: the performance verification, the independent governance, the having to deal with athletes who are unique personalities, and that's the reason why they're successful. But they have demands of the platforms and other things, and that would certainly take up a lot of your bandwidth. I'm sure of that.
For sure. It's a very demanding aspect of it in terms of resources. And I don't think we'd ever be against it per se, but I think a lot of that we would need to offload. Like there would need to be some sort of separate entity that would handle the verifications and make sure that all these riders are legit, because I don't think our team of two can probably handle that on our own.
With that in mind, third-party organizers could come on and use your platform as the set of roads and handle it that way as well. It would take everything out of your hands.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be great use of it.
Looking 12 months out then, Matt, going back to your vision, what major features and milestones are you expecting Biketerra to hit in the next 12 months?
12 months? Oh gosh. For sure, visuals. We're going to do another overhaul of those avatars, environments. We're going to make it look a lot more tidy. We're going to hopefully make it, more familiar landmarks. Visuals are a big part of it. Again, TTT support. So there's kind of community-based racing. I feel like that's a big pro in terms of something we want to focus on, as well as something I think a lot of racers would enjoy. We just want to make sure we get it done right and not just try to copy what's already been there. So that's definitely something for the next 12 months. In terms of visuals too, surface types. So since you can upload a GPX file and since you can edit them, in theory, we can have a way so you can customize, let's say you're doing a pro route and there's cobblestones in a certain area, or you're doing a mountain bike trail and you want to have dirt road or single track or something. That's something you can eventually be able to configure within the route editor, and it'll show up on Biketerra. So different surface types would be really cool, and able to customize that as well would be really neat. So I think those are the biggies. Another thing is probably more in terms of physics and drafting. Like right now, one of the complaints we're getting is so we have racing but not time trials just yet, but people are still using racing kind of for time trials. And drafting, like falling into the draft and breaking away from the draft, is still kind of an open question. So we're trying to work on that because it's way different than it is in real life. When you're in a pace line and you want to fall in line with the person in front of you, you kind of hit the brake, you veer over, and it's not quite that simple with virtual, especially if you don't force users to require steering and stuff. So yeah, long story short, there's a lot on our roadmap for the next 12 months, but I'm pretty confident that we'll get a lot better as a platform by then.
So I know you put a lot of the content generation into the hands of your users. Any tools for event organizers that want to use your platform to customize the signage or the branding, or customize different race formats or that type of thing? Is that on your radar at all?
Yes. So right now, event organizers can create their own events. They can choose whether or not the event is a casual ride, a workout, like you can do a group workout, or a race. And that's pretty much it. So in the future, we'll have more controls over, whether race organizers want to allow for bots, which I'm not super thrilled about, but we'll see how that pans out. Obviously time trial support and just more features to allow event organizers to control the experience.
So I'm going to finish, Matt, with one little broader question, because we started quite broadly trying to position you into the space, and I'm going to finish getting you trying to position yourself into the space for us over the coming future. So, where do you see indoor cycling, that space, heading over the next few years, and what role do you hope Biketerra plays in shaping its future?
Oh my, that is a great
I
question.
told you it was a big question.
Gonna have to get my crystal ball out. But oh god, I see Zwift still being big. I see MyWhoosh still being around. I think they're going to have to keep injecting money into the platform to keep the racing series going. Maybe some more consolidation. I don't really know what's going to happen with Training Peaks Virtual. Just as a complete outsider, my sense is that they're going to have to make some visual changes in order to keep it thriving. Because of all the platforms, honestly, like TPV probably has the best under the hood and physics model, aside from Biketerra, of course. But no, they're excellent. But yeah, they're going to have to improve visually in order for them to kind of stay up.
So before you finish that thought, you should expect that to happen in the very, very near future.
Cool. Yeah, I can't wait to see.
Just a little teaser that should be happening almost probably before this goes out.
Sweet. But yeah, I see maybe some more consolidation. It's really hard to predict, though.
Yeah, we take that crystal ball that you were wondering whether you had, Matt, and we take a look in it and we move forward sort of 5, 6, 7 years. What do you hope Biketerra looks like?
Oh boy. I hope Biketerra just becomes a platform that any indoor cyclist knows about and says, you know what, I just want to hop on a ride, and they know that it's the easiest thing in town to use and that they get enjoyment from it and they improve themselves from it. I think that's my big hope in 7 years.
Right. Well, do you know what? I think we'll finish there. It's been absolutely fabulous, Matt, having you on the Virtual Velo podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chris, Emma. It's been awesome.
Well, you can subscribe to the Virtual Velo podcast on your favourite podcast provider and, of course, on YouTube. You can follow me, Emma Martin, on Instagram at biking_Emma, and you can follow Chris at the Zimmunique. You can catch me putting words to the action this Sunday on the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club. You can also head over to thezimmunique.com and please become a member of the Escape Collective to join the conversation and support independent cycling esports journalism. We have yet more interesting guests from the world of cycling esports joining us, including Training Peaks Virtual founder Dr. George Gilbert, Canadian cycling esports national champion Tiffany Penner, Swedish road race and esports national champion Mika Soderstrom, and several other impactful people waiting in the wings. I'm thanking them from the bottom of my heart for their patience. Chris and I will be there shortly, we guarantee. Thank you to Matt Gibbs for sharing his fascinating perspective into the virtual cycling landscape, and to you, our listeners, for joining us and listening to the podcast. Chris will remind you, as ever, to please take care of your heart. Get that coronary calcium scan should you even think you might possibly need one. Me, as ever, stay safe, enjoy your riding. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.